Welcome to the PracticeBloom podcast. We supply breakthrough marketing tips and techniques for those medical practices looking for more patients and more profits.
Okay, welcome to another episode of the PracticeBloom podcast, or the video if you're watching this on a video. Today we're going to talk about acquisition process, the one patient that got away. So we deal with a lot of practice owners, and a lot of the stuff that we do involves process. Now, in a particular individual practice, we sort of learn the nuances when we start to work with a client. And one of the things that's very interesting is to look at this acquisition process, right? So we're very good as a company at driving traffic and phone calls and lead forms and all the things that are required for us to make a practice successful in their marketing strategy. But the question is, what happens afterwards? And so this comes down to that one patient that got away. So time after time, what we try and do when we have our monthly or bi-weekly or quarterly meetings, whatever the facilitation of the meeting strategy is for the practice owner or marketing coordinator, we try and go through what actually transpired afterwards. So there's a big question mark there, because obviously we can drive traffic and we can drive phone calls, that's our job, but patient acquisition is not really fully done until the patient is being seen. So tracking that is another whole element. So one of the things that can help you and help for your practice, if you're watching this and you're a practice manager or you're a doctor or someone who's looking to improve getting patients to get to the waiting room, is to actually go through your calls. So the magic of recording phone calls, and I know there's some HIPAA compliance here that you have to be wary of, but that's really a secondary discussion, because we're actually talking about just the inbound phone calls, inbound initial phone calls, people just asking for an appointment. What we find, 30% of the calls are potentially thrown away, and it's amazing. The reason why that's happening is that the front desk is usually either too busy, not well informed, they haven't been trained, they're new, they don't pick up the phone, it goes to voicemail, worse, it gets transferred to somebody's voicemail, or even the one that really is the one that got away is that it's after hours and they just hang up. So there's 6 to 10 things in there that just are immediate things that when we start to record phone calls, we start to record the inbound traffic. We start to actually see the traffic coming in from SEO and SEM and AdWords and social media and all the things that are out there. We start to see the relative balance of really a practice's strengths on closing the sale, which is really what we're talking about, which is if you've got process set up so that each one of these things that's handled, each one of those idiosyncrasies where we know, in a lot of the practices that we see, there's just, it becomes, where does the ball get dropped? And that 30% of marginal calls that could have been handled better are the ones that got away. And what I mean by that is that the 30% of new inbound calls, not obviously existing patients who are calling up maybe to change an appointment or to ask a question, but the inbound traffic where 30% of the calls can be better handled. Now, some of this ends up being very, very expensive. If you think about the cost per click, and in particular you're talking about spine surgeons and gastric bypass and things that are extremely expensive, $20 clicks in AdWords. So you really have to think very clearly on what your process is for handling the sort of 6 to 10 things that happen when someone picks up the phone. The biggest one that I see that I hear that I see all the time is that the insurance strategy is always going to be, well, we don't take this and we take that. And I think the concept is there's always somebody out there as a referral strategy to hand off that patient. So if you don't take this insurance, you give it to somebody who does, and you potentially get referral traffic back or referral calls back. And you make friends with people who are obviously in the same space. So I think that's the biggest one I see where there's just, no, we don't take it, click. And what about the fact that maybe there's another person in that family that you could even get connected with that might have the insurance you might take, that might have a procedure that would go back and start with that whole discussion. So there's a larger body of work here to discuss beyond just the framework of handling calls. So when you think about the things that are happening about inbound traffic, this one patient that got away is a critical component of having a process set up. And we help a lot of the practitioners with this process strategy so that things get more tight. There isn't so many patients that have just kind of fallen through the cracks, and that when dollars are spent in marketing, and dollars are spent a lot in this space, they're being used effectively. So I hope that helps. Take this back to your team and listen to some phone calls. If you haven't got recording software, it's very easy to find this on the web and listen through your calls, and I think you're going to find a lot of gold. So if you're considering new growth for your practice, go to PracticeBloom/start, and we can get you your free assessment. We can go through everything that relates to your product, your services, your competition, your website, your marketing, and we'll send you a great video that overviews everything. And we'll get you a report that will show you what you need to do to improve everything and start to grow your practice.